Good morning. Welcome to Sunday morning at Harrow United Church. We're happy to see so many people out here. We are gathering for worship and to reacquaint ourselves with who God is and who we are. We take time to hear about the work and life of Jesus and to consider how we can respond to it and in our daily lives. Just a reminder that next week is the annual meeting of this congregation, and it takes place during the worship service. It's not too painful. You really should come out. It's quite interesting. Each committee will report on the activities of the church, and there'll be some opportunities for discussion. The office has prepared printed books, and they're available that you can read the reports in advance, so you be sure to pick one up about learn more about the life and the work of the congregation over the past year. Just a few announcements. First of all, a reminder that some of us are walking for the coldest night of the year to raise funds for the downtown mission. And I get to talk first. Darrow's walking, but he gets to talk later. So looking for sponsorships. It's easy to go online if you prefer to not do that, and you can give me cash and we'll do it. But last year, our team from Harrow United Church was called Hucksters, and we raised, I think, over $12,000. So we're a very significant contributor to that cause. And I was thinking this week when it was so cold, I was really glad I didn't have to stay outside. So, and we have an announcement from our choir director, Patty.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I see that today there are a lot of young people in the church, so that's fantastic. You're here on the right day. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., we're starting a youth choir. And we've got one piece that we'd like to sing with the senior choir, so it'll be like a generational thing. So hopefully we'll see some youth out to sing for an hour tomorrow.
Nope. Nope.
Anyway, how's that? Excellent. I was just wondering what Patty means by young.
Under 100?
So we haven't had a children's choir or a youth choir here for a very long time. But as it happens, we do actually have a whole mess of kids here this morning. So if you're a kid, put up your hand. Excellent. If you're a kid and you like to sing, put up your hand. How about if you're a kid? That's great. If you're a kid and you like to sing, but you think you have an awful voice, but if you're in a crowd, nobody will hear how bad you are. So there's lots of people that qualify. So Patty, who is a great musician, great music teacher, will work with a group from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock here tomorrow. And if you're able to come, that would be really good. Will it be fun?
Oh, always.
Excellent.
It's fun.
I didn't want to promise that unless it's true. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So and as Leslie mentioned, I am one of the walkers, one of the hucksters for the coldest night of the year walk. Who else is walking this year? But I'm the one at the microphone. So, and as Leslie, yep. Oh yeah, I think we're walking at the fruit wagon. Yeah, I think that's true. And maybe what we could do is closer to the date announce when we're going to do it. And if people who aren't even on the team want to come and walk with us, that's probably okay. It's a lovely place to walk around the orchards and being out in fresh air. But I have to say that personally, I set a goal for how much money I would raise this year. And it was a fairly modest goal. And I've had some good support from Gloria Gorick. So she's off the hook, but I have a ways to go in my goal, and I would really like to meet my goal. And if I don't make my goal, I'll be very sad. Maybe you can live with that, I don't know. I have an assistant this morning to help me light the candle. We even practiced the lighting part. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Push really hard, okay. Good job. Thanks, Prim. When the light of love grows dim in our lives, love lights up the room. Let's sing the refrain from A Light is Gleaming. So there's something else I often need an assistant for. And ever, do you remember this? When I would use this stick and bang it and make the bowl ring? I think you were pretty little last time you would have seen me do this, but maybe I can use your help this morning. So I use this stick to make the prayer bowl ring, and we do it at the beginning and at the end of a time of quiet. And in that quiet time, all you have to do is breathe. And we're breathing in God's love and breathing out God's love. But your job will be to use the stick to hit the bowl. Good job, Everett. Thank you. The land we're gathered on is honored by the wampum treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Lenni, Lenape, and allied nations. We acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi and Huron-Wendat peoples, and our neighbors, the Caldwell First Nation. We share history, seek a better future with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Larry, come get the magic. Oh, you've got your own magic box. Excellent.
Well, we've got all these children here. Come on up. And come on, Ginny, show them what to do. We have a few rhythm instruments. Pick an instrument. Morning, Izzy. And Ginny brought her brother Seamus. Seamus, come and get, you want some sticks here? Look at, would you like those, Leona? Or would you like this? This? Here you go. What do you want, Jen? What do you? You pick something else, that's fine. Okay. Do you know what these are? Would you like those, Seamus? They're sticks, that's right. They call them lummy sticks. And I won't explain them all to you, but this is what you do. Can you do that, guys? Makes a good noise. Can you do that, Seamus? Yeah. Okay. All right, let's come up here. We'll all stand up here in the front. Perfect. Yeah, look at our crowd today. This is awesome. Okay. Last week, some of you were here, and do you remember we learned a song? It was, "What Does the Lord Require of Us?" And Darrow talked about what the sort of things we were supposed to do, right? So I said last week that we were going to learn it last week, and then we're going to do something tricky today. So Mr. Larry and I talked, and we're going to sing it through first. So if we can have the words up so people can see them. Okay. Now if you look, there are 3 different colors. Can you see the 3 different colors? Yeah, we've got black, red, and blue. And so those are the 3 different verses. So first off, we're just going to practice it. We're going to sing it all the way through from the beginning to the end because each verse is a little bit different. Okay? Let's do it, Larry. And we'll use our instruments. Way to go. What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? Justice, kindness, walk humbly with your God. To seek justice and love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Good job. Okay, so I think I need some help with this. Mr. Woodbridge, can you come up and help me? Always. I knew. So you stand on that side, sir. Okay. So what this really is a round. Have you ever sung a round at school? No? Yeah? You've sung a round at school? So when you sing a round, that means one side starts to sing the song, and then they sing a little bit, and then the other side starts to sing the same song. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. So I get to start. So everybody over here is going to sing with me, and everybody over there is going to sing with John. Okay? Now, just so you know when you start, so we're going to sing the black first, and then when we get down to justice and kindness, you guys will start then. All right? All right. Any questions? All right. Let's go. What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? Justice, kindness, walk humbly with Good job. Good job. It sounded really nice. Yes. It's a good thing he came and helped us. Leona, high five. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay, now I know for a fact that Darrow has something very tricky planned for you this morning.
Larry, you think I would do something tricky?
I think so.
You think I would try to trick kids?
No, never.
No, I wouldn't. Do you guys want to sit down? You can sit down right on that little step there. I would never do anything tricky. So, some of you seem pretty smart. You look pretty smart. So tell me, what's in these?
Salt.
Really?
I want to say one is salt and one is sugar.
That's interesting, because I was thinking that when you look at salt and sugar, they both kind of look the same, right? I can't tell by looking at these shakers which one might have salt and which one might have sugar. In fact, if I knew when I brought them in, I don't know now because they're all mixed up. I actually have no idea. Can you tell just by looking at them? Can you tell which one might be salt and which one might be sugar? Can you tell just by looking at it? What do you think?
I think that one's sugar and that one's salt.
She thinks this one's sugar and this one's salt. There's only one way I can think of to test this out. So, what I was thinking, and if you think this is gross, you don't have to do it. But I was thinking that I'd get you to lick one of your fingers, and then I would pour whatever's in this onto your finger. A little bit will stick, and then you can taste it, and you can see whether Isabel is right. Who wants to do the experiment? Excellent! Okay, who here is capable of licking their finger?
I could do it.
Okay, so you all have to lick your finger, and I get to pour whatever this is on your finger. Do you want to try? Lick your finger. Lick your finger. I bet you have moms and dads who spend lots of time telling you not to put your fingers in your mouth. And then, what? Did you lick your finger, Robert? Don't say anything. Lick your finger, Leona. Lick your finger. Did you lick it? No. Do you want to try?
Sure.
Did you lick your finger? Okay. So what? Tell me, what was in there?
Salt. Salt. That's salt.
Salt. Okay. So, what do you think that means for this one?
It's sugar.
Okay, there's two possibilities here, right?
Yeah, it might be salt.
But if I was being really tricky, what do you think I would put in here?
Salt.
So, chili flakes, yeah. So even though there's a possibility that I might be really tricky, who wants to try?
Me.
All right, so lick your finger. You ready? Everett, you ready? Leona, are you ready? Are you ready?
It's sugar.
So it's sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't as tricky as some people thought I might be, which is probably okay. So there's a part of the Bible that Leslie's going to read for us later, and in that little story, Jesus says that we should be like salt. And what that means is it's up to us to add flavor to the world and try to make the world better. But he also says if salt loses its saltiness, it's no good. But I was thinking you can't even tell just by looking at it whether the salt is still good. You can't even tell by looking at it whether it's salt or sugar. And I was also thinking that people are kind of like that too. You can't always tell just by looking at them whether they're going to be friendly or whether they're going to be mean, whether they're going to be helpful or not. Can you tell just by looking at somebody?
No.
Sometimes I can, but sometimes I can't. And I've learned that sometimes the best way to be able to tell whether someone is nice and helpful and kind is by how they act, what they do. Just like when you got the salt or the sugar on your tongue, it acted on your tongue to make a taste. We kind of get a taste for a person by how they act. Does that make any sense?
No. Yes.
Well, I hope it makes sense because that's the only story I got. So that's my story. And you know what happens after the minister tells the story? You clap and say, "Good story." No, you get to go with Jackie and Primrose to Sunday school. And then later on in the service, we're going to have communion, and I would love it if you came back and you could help me with communion. But follow them. They know where they're going. Okay? Bye. Do I need help getting up? Probably.
You're far more graceful than I am.
And wearing a long dress, too.
Now it's time for our offering. Our faith community is a gathering of people who seek to follow the way of Jesus and to share his message of love and hope with the world. Our offerings of money, creativity, and hands-on work are absolutely vital to our mission, and we thank God for all of it. Let's take a moment now to prayerfully dedicate all of the offerings. We'll say the prayer together. Dear generous God, you bless us and provide what we really need. We might wish for more, but most of us have just about enough. We are blessed to be able to share what we have for the good of others. We give thanks and ask you to accept the offerings we make as followers of the way of Jesus. Amen. This is the introduction to the reading from the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament. The first 5 books of the Old Testament were also called the Torah, and Jewish tradition claims they were written by Moses, who, according to their origin story, led the Hebrew slaves in a revolt and then an escape from captivity in Egypt. Our reading from the book of Leviticus shows us that in ancient Israel, salt was of great value. All the grain offerings that you present to God must be made without yeast. You must never burn any yeast or honey as a fire gift to God. You may offer them to God as an offering of first fruits, but not on the altar as a pleasing fragrance. Season every presentation of your grain offering with salt. Don't leave the salt of the covenant with your God out of your grain offerings. Present all your offerings with salt. If you present a grain offering of first fruits to God, bring crushed heads of the new grain roasted. Put oil and incense on it. It's a grain offering. The priest will burn some of the mixed grain and oil with all the incense as a memorial, a fire gift to God. And now we're going to a reading from Matthew's Gospel. We are continuing with reading of the Beatitudes, a collection of sayings of Jesus in which Matthew's Gospel are presented as words that he spoke at a gathering of his inner circle of disciples. We can hear his words as an inspiring description of how we are meant to make a difference in the world. We pick up the reading in the 5th chapter, verses 13 to 16, as found in the Message. Let me tell you why you are here. You are here to be the salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of the earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness, and it will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to bring light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven.
So this week I saw a number of familiar faces when I went to the Portuguese club to get phlebotomized. Do you know that word? That's the fancy word for bloodletting, right? Yeah. So you go in and give blood, and it's always one of the things I look forward to when I go there is to see lots of people that I know from the community who come in and do their bit. But that's not my favorite part. And the sitting down or laying down on the low couch and having them stick the needle in my arm, that's not my favorite part either. In fact, that's probably my least favorite part of the whole exercise. Only thing that would make that worse is if I watch. That's really, really not a good thing. My favorite part about getting phlebotomized is afterwards when they insist you have a salty, crunchy snack. I like that part, and I usually have 2 bags. I start with, you too? Yeah. I have the crunchy cheesies. That's my opening thing, and then I take a bag of pretzels to go, and I feel justified, right? And I was doing some research about this, and there's a reason why Blood Services provides the salty snacks. And Larry knows, because she was a nurse, she knows about this, I'm sure, that when you give blood, you actually lose about 3 grams of salt. I'm sure I ate at least 3 grams of salt. And salt gets a bad rap. If you have too much salt, it's not good for you, but we actually do need salt. Back when I was a marathon runner, and I would train for half and full marathons, whether I was training or running the race, I had to pay attention. I had to learn how to do this to make sure that the level of electrolytes, and salt is an electrolyte, the level of electrolytes in my body was sustained, because if it doesn't, your body suffers. It changes the body's ability to conduct electricity. So your brain function will be limited, your heart function can be affected. It's just not a good thing when you sweat out too much salt. I remember the second marathon I ran in, my training partner, who was a really good runner, he beat me to the finish line, which was fine, but then I had to find him in the medical tent. And he wound up in the emerge because he had let his salt levels get too low, and he was very ill as a result. Salt can literally be a matter of life or death. And it's not an exaggeration. If you look at the history of the world and civilizations, that wars have been fought over access to salt. Salt is that important. And salt has also been used as a part of non-violent efforts to change the world for better. When the Indian National Congress asked Mohandas Gandhi to organize non-violent civil disobedience to launch their campaign to end colonial rule in India, one of the ways Gandhi chose was to protest salt laws. Do you know about this? There was a time in colonial India when the British wrote laws that gave them a monopoly on the production, the distribution, and the sale of salt. And they imposed a tax on it, because that's what imperial governments do, right? Impose taxes to have control. So even people who live near the ocean, and India has lots of ocean coast, right? They were prohibited from making their own salt. And that's exactly what Gandhi chose to do. And he wrote to the viceroy and said, this is what we're going to do. On this day, at this time, me and people from my community are going to be on the seashore, and we are going to make salt. What are you going to do about it? So that whole thing, that colonial control over what people can do, and controlling things that are really about how you stay alive, that wasn't just a thing the British did in India. That happens wherever colonial powers are at work. And that same kind of control was exercised, and it continues to be exercised here in Canada. There was a time, not that long ago, when First Nations people were not allowed to hunt, or fish, or farm, or gather off the land. There was a time when First Nations people were not allowed to leave the reserve unless some white guy signed a pass. So that kind of colonial control is not just far away. So Gandhi, Gandhi was a smart guy. He was trained as a lawyer. He was a mystic. He was a religious teacher, but he understood law, and he understood the power of working with simple, basic things to make a big point. He chose salt because it's basic to human life. Every person, rich or poor, Hindu or Muslim, Christian or Jew, or Sikh or Buddhist or whoever, everyone needs salt. He said, next to air and water, salt is probably the greatest necessity of life. And that common staple of life has been used for thousands of years to flavor our food, but more importantly, to preserve our food. Before the world got all connected by ocean freighters and transport trucks, proximity to a source of salt would determine where people could actually live, where they could settle. You may know this. Some scholars think that the word salary comes from a Latin word salarium, which was the allowance paid to Roman soldiers during that empire to buy basics like bread and salt, what they needed to survive each day. And that's probably where we get that phrase. Ever hear somebody raise the question about whether you were worth your salt? In other words, are you worth what it costs to keep you alive? Like, are you making up for what you cost to be here? Salt is serious stuff. In the ancient world, in the time of Leviticus and then thousands of years later in Jesus' time, they might not have had a scientific grasp of what its properties were and how it worked chemically, but they did know that it was necessary and powerful and almost magical in its properties, and that may help us understand why in that passage that Leslie read from Leviticus, they're making such a big deal about making sure you salt your offering. What that really means, well, it has a couple of sort of symbolic meanings. One is, if you're making a sacrifice to God, they thought you should give something good. Give something important in your life. Don't just give leftovers. Give something that is life or death. So salt your offering. And the other thing is that because salt had these sort of magical properties, they kind of connected it with what would happen at the altar. It was a bit beyond human understanding. And it's okay to be reminded, right, that there's stuff in our lives that we can't explain, but we know are important. That was fun with the little guys. And watching them look at their finger and trying to tell by what it looked like, whether the crystal was salt or sugar. And it's hard to tell. I know you're all going to go home and try it, right? I have to remember not to put both those shakers back in the drawer where all the salt and peppers are stored. I'll probably have to, maybe I'll need someone to test it for me. We often will encounter salt as tiny little crystals. It would have been fun to get somebody who works at the mine to bring us a big chunk, right? A big chunk of halite, because that's how it comes. But we're used to seeing these tiny little crystals. But when Jesus told us to be like salt, he was saying be something more than tiny little crystals. He was reminding his followers and us that we have work to do that is life or death, that is sometimes beyond understanding, but is absolutely important to the fate of people around us. We are meant to be salt in the world. I want to go back to Gandhi a little bit. So March 12th, 1930, Gandhi and about 80 other people from his ashram, his religious community, set out on foot. And they like I said, he'd written to the Viceroy of India ahead of time, telling him exactly what he was going to do. It was about 240 miles, and they planned to walk it in 23 days. So they walked a little over 10 miles a day till they got to the village of Dandi on the coast. And when they got there, well, on the way, they'd planned this route. They went through a whole bunch of villages and towns all the way there. And every place they went, people joined them. So by the time Gandhi and his little band of followers from the ashram got to the sea, there were thousands of people ready to do what he was going to do. And of course, the army was waiting for them, because that was the setup. So Gandhi walks to the sea with his friends, and he did this daring thing. He picked up from the beach a lump of mud that had salt crystals encrusted in it. He put it into a pail of seawater, put it over a fire, and boiled it. And that's how you make salt. The water would evaporate, and what was left would be salt. I guess you'd have to sift out the mud, sift out the beach sand, but that's where salt came from. And they did this thing that was illegal under the Raj, under British colonial India. Simple things they did. They walked. They talked to people along the way. When they got tired, they slept. When they got hungry, they ate. Probably very simply, but that's what they did. They did what they could, what was within their capacity to help other people. They did it with commitment and courage and passion for the well-being of their neighbors. And a lot of them got arrested for making salt. A lot of them got beat up, physically beaten by British soldiers for making salt. Gandhi and his followers had worked hard to train the people who came with them in techniques of nonviolent confrontation. So one of the remarkable things about this story, one of the things that makes it salty, is that when the British soldiers started beating on these people, nobody fought back. It was a non-violent protest. That's what Gandhi's genius, right? When the forces of oppression want to control you, want to beat you down, don't fight back. That got so much attention in national and international press. It was the first big step in there being legitimacy to the call of the Indian National Congress for independence. People around the world paid attention because this little guy and his friends went and made salt. It's no small thing to answer the call to be faithful, to do what you can do, to do what is right, to make a difference in the world. Take a risk, make a sacrifice, go out of your way to help somebody else. I was talking to someone this morning who told me one of the pleasures of their day is to read to someone who is blind. And they do it every day. And that's not just for the person who can't read for themselves. That's also for the person who gets to help. This morning when we had this big posse of kids come in, which was really great, I asked Isabella, one of our youth, if she would help Jackie with Sunday school. And she said, yes, I would love to help. There's something in us, I think, that likes to do what is good. We feel useful. We feel salty. We're making a difference in the world. So I think there actually are no excuses. Every human can find some way to be helpful to somebody else. And if you can't think of some stuff, I got a list. And these are not original to me, right? But we've been making Valentines. Patricia got this going with Sunday school, making Valentines, which will be going out to people who might not get a Valentine. Because there's lonely people. If that sparks something in your heart, that's good. Maybe you'll make a Valentine. But also, I'm looking for a few people who could help me by taking on a little list of 4 or 5 people and calling them at least once a month and saying, how you doing? And these will be people we haven't seen in church for a while. Not to say, come on back to church, because, that's okay, but that's not the point. It will be, how are you doing? Are you okay? Because everyone needs to know that they matter. It might be you can make a little extra donation to the church. Did you know this, that our water main broke in the cold? So we turned the water on this morning for a couple of hours, so if you have to go to the bathroom, you're good. But John has to turn the water off again after church. We don't know yet what that's going to cost to locate and then trench, and then who knows what's down there, right? So, after a couple of years of COVID, we got another thing going on. So if you have a little extra, that would make our finance chair smile. He doesn't look all that worried, but it's something, right? If you're so inclined, next time the blood services trucks pull up at the Portuguese Club, you could get phlebotomized. And that makes a difference to a lot of people, right? I bet you everybody knows someone who has needed blood at one time or another. And I know not everybody can do it for lots of reasons, but if you can, yeah. So, look, those are just some examples, but look around in your own life, in your own community, your own family, your friends. Is there something you could do that would make life saltier, more flavorful for somebody else? Jesus' call to be salt of the earth came from a collection of sayings that we call the Beatitudes. And in the translation that we heard, it talks about being blessed and being a blessing. There's another translation that says happy. Happy are those who are humble, they'll receive what God has promised. Happy are those whose greatest desire is to do what God requires. God will satisfy them fully. Happy are those who are merciful to others. God will be merciful to them. So, who here likes being happy? Yeah, most of us. And it's a simple equation that works for most of us most of the time. If we put ourselves aside a little bit and try to help somebody else, we like how that feels. We like making a difference. We like feeling useful. We like helping other people. In the annual report, which has been printed, I'm sure you'll all just take it home and read closely, because it's really, because you will. In my minister's message for this year, I quoted a guy named Frederick Buechner. He was a Presbyterian minister, an author. He lived to be 96. I figure if someone lives to be 96, they got something to say. They know something about life, right? There must have been some wisdom there. And he said, by and large, the kind of work God usually calls you to do is the kind of work that A, you most need to do, and B, the world most needs to have done. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. He's talking about being salty. He's talking about blessing others with what we can do. It's really good, I think, to be reminded of the great joy and purpose and meaning and actual happiness that can come when we set ourselves aside and be for other people. Amen. Our hymn is verses 1 and 3 of As We Gather at Your Table. Can somebody go out and let the kids know they can come back for communion? I'll be right back. So, I just wanted to let our audiovisual crew know that I'm going off script. Which have you ever noticed that sometimes that I don't do what's on the pieces of paper? I know that in some churches with some ministers, they actually have communion practice. And they have an exact way it's supposed to be done, which is cool. That's just not, I just don't do that. And besides, with all these great children in church this morning, I wanted to do something that would involve the kids. So would you like to come up and gather with me around the table? Excellent. I'm so glad you said yes. Yeah, so what we have here, we have tiny little cubes of bread, and we have little glasses that have grape juice in them. And we have, come over here, Prim. And we have a bun, and the bun has been cut. Somebody cut it with a knife for me so that when I break it, it'll be easy to break. And I got a bunch of grape juice in here. How is it? Is it good? Yeah. We know it's going to be okay because they're trying it out. So who has been in church before when we have communion? I have. Leona, you haven't, but you may not even remember because you were littler then. Everett, you definitely have. So how about over here? Who's been to church before when we had communion? Okay, so the first thing to know is it doesn't matter if you belong to this church. It doesn't matter if you belong to any church at all. You're still welcome to have communion. The only rule we have here at this church is that if you're hungry at all for something bigger than yourself, you're looking for something more in life, and you want to somehow be in touch with the mystery of the universe and of God and love and life and being salty, then you can have communion here. That's the only rule, because none of this stuff actually belongs to us. It's all stuff that God gave us to do good things with. That's why when they sneak little bits of bread, I'm not going to get upset about it. So when I was little, in the church I went to, the kids weren't always allowed to have communion. They had this rule that you had to be a certain age to have communion. And when I asked about it, because I kind of asked a lot of questions, what was told to me was, you can't have communion until you're old enough to understand it. Oh. So who understands communion totally? I don't. Good for you. Because I don't, and I've been doing this for a long time. But here, let me tell you what I think it's about, okay? There was a time when Jesus had a bunch of his friends together, and they were having a meal. And Jesus knew he only had a certain amount of time left with his friends, but he wanted to make sure they would always remember him. And what we know is that people remember things better if the memory is attached to an actual thing. So Jesus got his friends together. At the beginning of the meal, he said, I know this just looks like bread, but this is kind of like my body. And whenever you break the bread and you share bread, Jesus said, please remember me. He wanted his friends to remember him. At the end of the same meal, he used wine. But I'm not going to give you guys wine, okay? Oh, man.
That's exactly what I thought that was.
Well, it looks just like it, right? Actually, you know what it is? It's a mix of grape and cranberry juice. And there's two reasons for that. One is that finding grape juice right now is really hard. The other is that cranberry juice makes it look better. Kind of, yeah. So in this meal, Jesus talked about wine. And wine, I think people drank a lot more wine back then because if it had been fermented, it lasted longer. But we use juice because we use juice. So he took wine, which was kind of magical because they didn't really understand how it would turn from grape juice into wine. And he says, when you pour the wine, remember me. The wine was kind of magical and wonderful and spirited, and he wanted them to remember him that way. So he poured out the wine and said, when you drink wine and share it, please remember me. And that's what Jesus wanted. So for more than 2,000 years, which is a really long time, whenever people who follow Jesus have got together, they've taken bread and they've broken it, and they've taken grape juice or wine and poured it out, and they've shared it. And it's kind of like a meal, only it's not really enough to be a meal, just to remind you of how good it is to eat. And when we do it, it's kind of a family gathering. And we try to make sure there's enough for everybody. And I know that Diane's worried about that this morning. Are there enough little cups? Because we have lots of people here today. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully there's enough. But before we share it, at our house, when we eat a meal, very often we'll make a prayer. And we ask God to bless what we're given. And we give thanks to God for this good life and all the things we share in it, including the bread and the juice and everything else we can share. So then what happens is everyone gets to have a little cube of bread and a little cup of juice. But because you're up here, you get to go first. So who would like a little cube of bread?
Thank you.
Some bread. Just one, not 17. Uh-oh. You got it? Do you want one? Yeah. I'm going to have one too. Did you already eat it?
Yeah.
You're way ahead of me. Often when we eat the bread, we'll say something like, this is the bread of heaven. This is the bread of... Can you say that? This is the bread of heaven. Exactly. And
This is the blood of heaven.
good job. Thank you. I'm going to eat mine now. Mm-hmm. I'm not supposed to talk with my mouth full. Sorry. But now we have the juice. So I'm going to give each one a little cup. And you know what? If it spills, it won't be the end of the world. Yeah. It'll be okay.
It will for me. I'm wearing a white shirt.
Yeah, we don't want it on your Mickey shirt. But so be careful. I'm careful too because I'm wearing white. But if you do happen to spill it, I don't think anyone's going to get really upset about it.
No one's going to die.
No one's going to die, exactly. So let's try this. I'm going to get you all to take a little cup, but don't drink it. Wait, we're all going to drink it at the same time, okay? Is that okay, Leona? You want one, Everett? You want one too? They're not very heavy because they're just plastic. They're not glass. Don't drink it yet. Don't drink it.
I am tempted to drink it.
Do you-
He drank it.
Would you like a some? Don't drink it. Don't drink it. Wait.
They already drank it.
That's okay. So sometimes when we have the little cup, we hold it up. We can say, "Thank you, God,"
Thank you, God.
and then we'll say, "The cup of salvation,"
Salvation.
and then we'll drink it.
From salvation.
Good job. You want to just put it on the table? Thank you so much for helping. You guys can go sit down, and now the servers who are going to serve everybody else will come up. Just like we planned. Okay. Everything's ready. Come on up. Let's take a moment now and in silence, remember those you know in your life who might need help and ask God to be with them. Amen. And let's pray the Lord's Prayer out loud together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Our closing hymn, which is also our closing blessing, is the first two verses of Sent Forth by God's Blessing. So,